Good morning, everybody. So, can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Perfect. If I shout too much, let me know because it's a bit strange to speak from with the loudspeakers here. So I'm gonna, as Francisco said, I'm going to try to give you an update on what the Commission did with the clean energy package. That was completely adopted and entering into force earlier this year for the 8 pieces of legislation. It's the biggest package that the Commission has come up with in terms of energy. So it's quite overarching and covers like 8 pieces of legislation ranging from market design to renewables, energy efficiency and security of supply. So I'm gonna try to focus today on the renewable related elements of the clean energy package. Yeah, okay, good. When we drafted the package, we took into account like 3 overarching objectives. One was to make the European Union world leader in renewable energy, meaning leading in deployment, but also leading in innovation, in the development of the new set of clean technologies. Second was making energy efficiency first. So, meaning that the energy that we don't consume is the best possible use of our fuels. And third, putting consumers at the very center of the system, offering consumers a good deal. So with that in mind, we started working. We came up with 8 pieces of legislation. If we look at it from the renewables angle, we see that it's not only about the revised renewables directive, which is the centerpiece of the new renewable framework, on which I will speak in detail, but it's also about the other pieces of the clean energy package. We have governance, for example, the governance regulation, which includes new obligations for member states, includes new national energy and climate plans on which member states can plan their deployment across the different dimensions of the energy union. There are gap-filling mechanisms in case the member states are not able to meet the EU level defined targets. Then we have the electricity regulation and directive, which are key instruments for deploying a market fit for renewable energy. There are key provisions enhancing short-term markets such as intraday and balancing markets. We have new dispatch and balancing rules that try to create a level playing field for all generation technologies. And we have key provisions putting consumers at the center, having more active consumers and citizen energy communities. We have all the efficiency legislation, such as the Energy Efficiency Directive and the energy performance of buildings, where we have key elements for renewables, such as a new energy savings obligations, where renewables can be accounted, and we have obligations for member states to have charging points in residential and non-residential buildings for electric vehicles. And finally, we have the revised Connecting Europe facility, which introduced a new element on cross-border projects in the field of renewable energy, allowing the EU to channel funds to renewable projects involving more than one member state, fostering regional cooperation and allowing that renewables are deployed in those places where they are more cost effective. But it's not only about legislation. We have many enabling initiatives that complement the legislation, and I can mention, the Covenant of Mayors to further engage cities, the Clean Energy for EU Islands initiative, where we try to support islands, EU islands efforts to lead the decarbonization of the energy system, their energy transitions, and of course the Coal Region in Transition initiative, which tries to provide alternatives for those coal-intensive regions that might suffer from the energy transition. So if we move to the central piece of the clean energy package with regards to renewables, we have the Renewables Directive. This was built around two main objectives. First is making the EU world leader on renewable energy, and second, to achieve a EU-level target binding of at least 32% renewables. So this is a big change from the existing regime. Now for 2020 we have national binding targets by which member states know what they have to do, and those targets on renewables are legally binding, meaning the Commission can take automatic legal action if those targets are not met. Now it's a EU-level binding target, which is translated into national contributions by which of the national energy and climate plans I mentioned. So with these two objectives, we came up with a set of measures across the different sectors covered by the Renewables Directive: electricity, heating and cooling, transport. I will speak a bit more in detail about those, and also empowering citizens, making citizens an integral part of the energy transition, allowing them to lead in order to, of course, to make them reap the benefits of the energy transition, but also to, of course, to attract private capital and to increase social acceptance thanks to on renewables, thanks to this increased participation of citizens. So we have going to the measures to give you some flavor of what we are trying to do. We have new provisions on support schemes for renewables, a new rule book, by which we make support schemes market-based. We establish an obligation for renewable installations to sell into the market with some exemptions for small scale and demo projects. We establish tenders as the rule, competitive bidding processes for member states to allocate support, again with some exemptions. And we establish the general rule of competition across different technologies in these tenders. Wind and solar should normally compete, but obviously we maintain the possibility for member states to go for technology-specific tenders, as it was already considered in the state aid guidelines. And of course, this needs to be done under there are some exemptions and there's some concrete rules that need to be followed. And obviously, all these elements are subject to the approval. If this concerns state aid, these elements are subject to the approval of the Commission DG Competition. So we have also provisions on increasing stability and predictability for support schemes, basically not allowing member states to make retroactive changes on support already allocated. This is extremely important because this has created a lot of uncertainty in the renewable market over the last few years in a number of member states. This has led to a complete stop in renewable deployment in a number of member states, to the increase of of the cost of renewables, because of course financing costs get much more expensive if you've made retroactive changes in the past. This is one key element forward. So another element on support, we try to make support more Europeanized, meaning open up support schemes to cross-border participation, so that there is a progressive convergence and also a better use of the renewable resources in Europe. That the renewable policy is not longer a national only policy without interaction with neighboring member states. Now on now on consumers and communities. I mean, these provisions are completely new. So we create a new set of rights for citizens with regard to the participation of the energy transition. We create the right for the consumers to self-consume renewable energy without being subject to disproportionate administrative procedures and taxes and charges and levies for the energy they self-consume. We create also the possibility and the right for jointly acting self-consumers to self-consume, people living in multi-apartment building blocks. And we also create a new category in the EU legal framework, which is renewable energy communities, meaning a group of citizens getting together and investing in new renewable energy installations. Could be a small wind farm or some solar panels. Compared to the jointly acting self-consumers, it doesn't need to be confined to the same building. I mean, it could be a number of citizens in the same city or in the same area getting together as a renewable energy community. Of course, this is very important in order, as I mentioned before, in order to get buy-in from citizens to the energy transition. We see more and more often the problem of people not wanting renewables in the backyard, not really being supportive of the energy transition, and this is an issue which is becoming a problem in an increasing number of member states. So these elements here, from renewable energy communities to renewable self-consumption, try to address those issues. Member states will have to develop an enabling framework to foster both self-consumption and renewable energy communities in their legal frameworks. But not everything is electricity. I mean, if we look at the numbers, at the renewable shares that Francisco has displayed before, he said that we are at 17.5 at European level in terms of renewable share on final energy consumption. This is correct, and of course we need to increase the pace of deployment. But if we look at the sectors, I think the deployment of renewables has been very different compared to between electricity, heating and cooling, and transport. If we look at the electricity sector, we are at 31% renewable share in 2017. If we look at the heating and cooling sector, however, we are only at 19.5%, and the transport sector is even lagging farther behind. It's at 7.6%. But the problem here is that heating and cooling is half of the final EU energy consumption, and transport is 1/4, and electricity is 1/4. So we need to act on those two other sectors. The Renewables Directive already take a very important step forward to try to address the heating and cooling and the transport sector with specific sectorial targets and specific measures trying to boost renewables in those sectors. But obviously, more is needed, also at member state level. Sector integration, what we call sector integration, which is the integration of the electricity sector with the heating and cooling, the transport, and the industry sectors, is extremely important if we want to achieve climate neutrality cost effectively, and if we want to have a well-functioning and efficient energy system. By sector integration, we mean having a more holistic view of the energy system, linking those components that were not really integrated. This means direct electrification. This is the natural option that everybody thinks about, because of course we have a higher share of renewables in the electricity sector. So the way to translate this to other sectors is to electrify. So this makes a lot of sense. It's very efficient, and and it could be done via heat pumps in the heating and cooling sector, or electric vehicles in the transport sector. But it's also about indirect electrification, meaning using gaseous fuels produced from renewable electricity to electrify those hard to decarbonize sectors, producing hydrogen with power to gas, and then using them for industry or aviation. This is also about using waste heat from industry or from data centers in district heating and cooling networks. So it's about having a more efficient and a more holistic approach to the design of the energy system. Now, I mean, the final slide, and I don't want to get into that. This is the target structure of the new clean energy package. So, as I said, we have a EU level target and contributions by member states. The Commission, member states have proposed already what they want to do. The Commission have assessed what they have proposed, and it's not sufficient. So we have issued earlier this year in June some recommendations to member states so that they increase what they have proposed. What they have proposed for renewables amounts to 30.4% for 2030, and we are working with member states so that they can close this gap in the final plans that they are going to submit by the end of this year. If this is not sorted by the end of the year, the Commission could come up with additional measures to try to solve the gap. And then the Commission, once this is established in the plans, the Commission will monitor delivery throughout the next decade to ensure, with different reference points, to ensure that at the end of the decade we meet the at least 32% currently agreed target. So thank you very much for your attention. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Antonio. Maybe if there is, Antonio will be also for the panel at the end, but if there is one key hot question, we can take it. Not? Okay, then let's move to the next one. But thank you so much, Antonio. Very, very good overview and comprehensive overview of the package, the importance not only of electricity, but also heating, cooling, transport. Something very interesting also, the role of citizens and how the tools to promote also peer-to-peer trading, community trading. And I think that our next speaker will be able to confirm that these provisions in the clean energy package are quite important, because we have Mr. Lars Falch, the CEO from Power Peers, actually trying to implement these business models of peer-to-peer trading, community energy. So we would like to hear actually on concrete application of these approaches.